I'm just like, I'm not here to kind of put anyone's desires or longing on a hierarchical structure, but to know that whatever their heart's desire is, I know that there's something really sacred and deep underneath that. So if I can help them, get to that by shedding whatever conditioning or whatever lack of self-belief and self-doubt is stopping them, then, I'm happy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the How to Be Human podcast. I'm super excited today. We have my friend Ceylan Kara here today. She is all the way in Ibiza, Spain. Ceylan, say what's up to everybody.
Hello, everyone. It's so exciting to be here.
I'm excited too. So just for a little bit of background, I wanted to let everybody know that Ceylan is a transformation guide offering one-on-one and group support to those seeking to come into a more intimate relationship with who they are at their core and building a life aligned. She's also trained in various modalities, including somatic psychotherapy, coaching, sacred sexuality, womb work, and soul initiation teachings. Most of all, she is a student of the path and loves guiding fellow travelers with her understanding of the tricky terrain of spiritual and psychological development. Whew. You, my friend, are involved in a lot, and I would just love to hear from you and share with our listeners and our viewers about, what is it like for you to be helping people with their transformational journeys through all these modalities that you have? Like, what are you doing in the world? What's that like day to day for you?
Yeah, it is, first of all, an incredible honor to be trusted by people in their transformational journey, to be a guide, to be there with them and to hold space for whatever is alive. Because as much as I try to articulate it and put words and modalities to it, it's really difficult to describe because it's very complex, as we all are as humans. But essentially, what I'm doing is, on the front end, when I'm working with clients, it's essentially just holding a non-judgmental space of presence and loving compassion, and using all the various modalities and maps and models that I've studied in the last 20 years or so. But most of all, the terrain that I've actually walked myself, to help them get to the other side faster and with more ease, and with the kind of the knowingness that there's someone else on the other side that gets you, that knows what you're going through and has been through it, and can hold a flag to you at a place that you're trying to get to. So it's really relationships. Like it's really just being a kind of, sometimes a wise grandmother, sometimes a bigger sister, sometimes a friend, sometimes a cheerleader, sometimes more of a therapist, more of a coach. But yeah, that's why I use the word guide, because I can't quite put it in one bucket and classify it. So yeah.
I love that. It sounds like you tune into the individual's needs and who they are needing to walk next to along their path. So it's almost like a dual role. You sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're walking with them along their journey, and you're kind of also holding the flag at the end of the journey on the other side, because you've done your own walking through a transformational journey and path, and kind of holding both of those dual roles. And yeah, sometimes it is a grandmother, sometimes it's a friend, sometimes it's whatever that person needs. How do you tune into what people are needing along their path? Are there clues? Are there signals?
Yeah, I think by now, so I've, as I said, I've started my first official workshops and spiritual work and personal development work when I was 17. And I was really lucky to have done a lot of work all over the world with a lot of different groups, with a lot of different, backgrounds and genders and, life situations, and a lot of different teachers and modalities. So what that gives me now is an ability and ease in understanding where someone is coming from. And it's almost like being a doctor of the psyche in a way. It's like, like the specific symptoms. And yes, it takes time sometimes to get to the root of things. But generally with, a gentle exploration, with questioning, and with the reactions that I'm getting in terms of like, is there a charge? Is there an emotional upwelling? Is there, is the person needing like a holding and a more therapeutic approach, or do they actually looking to more expand and grow and be creatively expressed in their life? And so I kind of choose my brushes as according to the piece that we're trying to paint,
I
basically.
love it. Your brushes, like life as art, the transformational journey as art. Um, I think I'm really curious about how you love guiding fellow travelers. So like, what is that piece for you, that love that you have guiding what does that feel like for you? And what is that engagement like?
Mm, yeah, it's a great question. I think so this is going to maybe sound a little bit strange, but I think it's soul intimacy that I love the most. And, so much of the world that we live in currently is structured in a way that doesn't necessarily encourage that, allow that to flourish. And so we tend to, in the day-to-day, live more of a scripted life, and then show up from those scripted roles. And in this like sacred container of like a transformational guidance, there is a soul intimacy piece that happens when the person that I'm working with touches their own core, their own soul. And, sometimes it comes through a big emotional release and it feels cathartic. And sometimes it's a lot more gentle, but it's like a recognition of another human at a really deep level that never gets old for me. It's really worth like that 1 minute of connection and of seeing that another person just touched a part of themselves that maybe they've never touched before. To be a facilitator of that, to just be a witness of that, is incredibly powerful for me.
That is some beautiful work, and the words that you use there of soul intimacy just to me sounds like a deep connection, and not so much a deep connection, and it could be between you and the person that you're guiding, but coming to a place of that deep connection for the individual with a deeper part within, that self within, whatever you want to call it, the light within, God, universe, spirit within, and coming to those spaces and coming to know yourself in there, is one of the most beautiful things I've experienced. So,
Yeah.
To hear that you can help facilitate that I hesitate to call it structured because I don't know that there's anything structured of painting life, but that it seems to be a path that continues to bring. Because I know you work with a lot of people, and that they are having their transformational experiences and reaching different. I hesitate to call it heights, but different illuminations perhaps in their lives. And illumination to me would be like just more deeper connections throughout their life, so not just on the transformational journey, but in the day-to-day with their partner, with their environment, with the work that they're doing with the world, to continue to feel that. I mean, wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. I mean, I just recently, we were closing a container with a client that I had, and she was just sharing that whenever she took a plane, she would always be thinking, oh, if the flight, falls, if the plane falls, and if I die, there's only two things that I think about, and one is my children, and the other one is the book that I haven't written. And she was a super successful like lawyer, but always had a dream of writing. And we worked together, and she basically written more in the 6 months that we worked together than she did in 25 years before that. And now she's working to write a book. And I'm just like, I'm not here to kind of put anyone's desires or longing on a hierarchical structure, but to know that whatever their heart's desire is, I know that there's something really sacred and deep underneath that. So if I can help them, get to that by shedding whatever conditioning or whatever lack of self-belief and self-doubt is stopping them, then I'm happy.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that you're doing this work in the world and that people can come to you. I will link to your resources down below so that people can reach you. Yeah, so I think this is a perfect time for us to kind of bridge into our wonderful How to Be Human questions. And I think it would be beautiful to kind of keep dancing around the words that you used of soul intimacy. It's so beautiful. Connection is just, it's almost like a plug into an outlet, but soul intimacy has the weaving of music and art with it and dancing. I love it. So, okay, Ceylan, how to be human. What to you is the best integration of humanness?
Yeah, I mean, integration is the word, I think, is about how to be human. I think it's all about integration. It's about integrating the different dimensions that we have access to as human beings. So integrating the divine, the spiritual part of ourselves with the animal body, and the flesh and the wildness, and integrating the feminine, more yin, more receptive, more gestational, more kind of chaotic, maybe part of ourselves with the more masculine, more yang, more active, more kind of directional parts. So I think being human is kind of a journey of holding that tension of all of those different parts and integrating it as a whole, beyond gender, beyond race, beyond, socioeconomical conditions, beyond any of the labels that we have obtained. We all have access to all these different dimensions. So to me, to be an integrated human being is to gradually come to a stage of development where we have not only accessed those different parts of those ourselves, but have also learned the art of balancing all of them in one kind of human expression.
I like that. I'd be really curious about kind of your either experience or witnessing of what it's like to bring someone in touch with perhaps it's their more feminine side, divine feminine, if it's more masculine, divine masculine. Because I would almost term that a lot of people think they're one or the other, or they have small parts. And I think what we're kind of both talking about here is like the wholeness of like how you can hold that whole piece and bring the pieces together and weave them together. So how have you experienced, I guess, their polarities and bringing that feminine and that masculine together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we all have them. It's not dependent on your gender or sexual orientation. We all have these energies. And so I think initially it is a little bit defined or conditioned by what kind of body we find ourselves in. And then also growing up, whatever like roles we might have been cast in our family or in our environment, etc. We tend to be maybe we may prefer one over the other, or we may be more comfortable in expressing one over the other. And sometimes it's actually not necessarily, I know a lot of women I used to be an M&A lawyer, so in those kinds of high stress, high power environments, I've actually met a lot of women who are more comfortable in their masculine, to be able to hold the position that they hold and do the job that they do. They have only been able to do that by heavily leaning towards their masculine. So just kind of like a clarity on, it doesn't really matter whether, you know, you're a man or a woman, you might still have a preference to one of those energies, and it might not be the one associated more commonly with your gender. And then I think the Jungians talk about an inner marriage, where basically it's about balancing that feminine and masculine energies within ourselves. And if we haven't done the inner marriage, then we usually project the feminine or the masculine to our partners, right? So to our romantic partners. So they are supposed to be holding that pole for us. So if I'm more feminine leaning, then I'm going to choose partners who will hold the masculine, more directional, more focused, more yang energies for me. But then that's not really an integrated human, right? So I'm still outsourcing. So in working, I think it's starting with like meeting, exploring where those energies are developmentally in each person. So just exploring the questions of, what energies that you feel more comfortable in your life. Do you feel more comfortable in your feminine, or do you feel more comfortable in your masculine? And defining those energies a little bit, not to restrict it, but to kind of give direction into that exploration. And then noticing the patterns that you play in your life in playing with those energies, and noticing, are there things that you're avoiding or outsourcing because you prefer one over the other, and you don't want to do the heavy work of having to integrate and build that energy up in yourself. And I mean, there's like a lot of different ways to work with it, but yeah.
I love that. The term inner marriage, it almost like signaled to me of like actually having like a sacred ceremony. Like, have you done that? Like, of like, once you've traveled this path and recognize the energies, whether you're more feminine, masculine, when you kind of bring those levels up and down and together in different ways, what a beautiful thing to have a sacred ceremony of an inner marriage. I love that idea.
Yeah. And then once you're married, there's a commitment. And so one of the commitments is actually to not betray yourself and to not leave yourself behind for anyone or anything. So it's like a maturation, like a level of maturity, of like ownership, like of self-ownership and sovereignty as well, in that coming together of the two parts of your being.
I love that. I love that. It's like bringing someone into the fullness, the wholeness of themselves. And when we talk about relationship, if we're talking about, two people in relationship, bringing 100% to the table and 100% to the table so that you can lift one another up, rather than 50% and 50% and the old adage of you complete me, you fill me up. And then I'm always dependent on you to fill this part of me, versus, that connection and filling is within. And I'm not asking you to do that for me. I'm asking you to bring your full self, and let's play together. Let's see what we can do from our full empowered selves.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah. It becomes life then becomes, and the relationships become more of a celebration, really.
And I mean, we could go on a tangent there, but we'll see if we get there again. Okay. So we've got soul intimacy. We've got kind of feminine and masculine in this discussion of inner marriage, coming together, wholeness. So how could we intentionally engage all humans to be more human, more integrated humans? What do you think about that?
So the way that I came to understand in, how we learn as humans is not necessarily through being told or talked at, or, reading stuff. I mean, they're all good things, but I think we learn through transmission. So we learn through actually being in the presence of others who have already received that knowledge and embody that knowledge. And just by interacting with people around us who are showing up with the embodiment of that, be it inner marriage, be it other kinds of levels of integration. So when I'm relating with you, without you teaching me anything specifically, I'm already getting a lot of information and learning and ways of being and doing in your presence. So I think this is a long way of saying the fastest way that I can think of is actually to do our own work, so that we are the carriers of that light or carriers of that transmission outside in the world. And it kind of like spreads almost like a virus, really. And everyone is just like, okay, so this is how we relate now. Or like, this is how we treat each other now. And yeah, and we see that happening, with all the, the growth of the spirituality, of the therapies being a lot more accepted, and talks and information out there around trauma and everything else, spirituality. It's like, I think it's already happening in an organic way.
Totally. I love the word that you use there, the transmission, almost through osmosis, being in somebody's presence. I got curious of, perhaps some of our listeners are dipping a toe in this water. And if they are in search of, or, wondering who they could be around to receive a transmission from. I mean, obviously, I don't think anybody's going to say you're going to receive a transmission, but I'm curious what you would tell somebody who's like, okay, I'm looking to find people who are perhaps wholly integrated, WHOOLLY, wholly. And how do you think someone who maybe isn't fully in tune, or maybe people are fully in tune, could find other people to learn from that might have this quality of fully engaged, intentional intermarriage, what we're kind of talking about?
Some people may not like my response, but I'll give it anyway. The best way that I found that you can find the people, you can find your people, you can find the right people, is by revealing yourself. So I think you can't expect to be a match or like somehow end up in the same places of the kind of reality that you wish to be a part of if you're not even making that wish or longing or desire in any way, shape, or form known externally. So it might start with an intention. It might be a revelation of what you truly desire to yourself, first and foremost. But I think then, taking the risk of talking about it, asking about it, revealing what it is that you wish to evolve into, and then magically you find the right people.
Love that magic piece in there. Yeah, so like the revealing, the word that comes up for me is vulnerability, and that word has a lot of attachments to it and a lot of understanding and misunderstanding. And yeah, taking the risk to share who you are, knowing that you're, a human who has humility and whatnot. You're not perfect, and you're looking for something else, looking for people to perhaps show you the way. And it's not necessarily a way that's out there, but the way in here. And I love, just because it's a simple step, right? So it's one of those simple, but not always easy, because to reveal oneself, are you ready? Can you, which parts are you going to reveal? Who do you feel safe revealing yourself to? Is it a blast on Instagram? Is it something that you can do continually? I think in my experience of peeling back layers of the onion, it's less of the blast. Okay, today I'm revealing myself. and more of a engagement of, whether it's once a week writing a blog that I share, where I really am this week. I'm having a good week, I'm having a bad week, here's what I want, where are the other people? Or but continually reaching into that space. I feel that consistency is what has helped me find people that I'm either a match with or have something to show me or I can learn from, like that.
Yeah, amazing. And so did you find magical encounters by revealing yourself consistently?
Yes, I have found magical encounters. Um, many magical encounters, and I think we connect in different ways with different people. But yeah, definitely for me, so just a little snippet of my journey is I started writing. And at first it was just in my notebook, in a journal every morning. It was 10 years ago, doing the thing every morning. And then I started sharing the writing, and I did that for a couple years. And then through the writing and like almost like this place of revealing my heart and what I wanted, these people started showing up that were like either going to help my writing or help some sort of step on my path or journey. And it's, kind of 10 years later now, and I'm at the spot of like, every day I'm in awe and wonder of the people that surround me and that are a part of my journey. And that I'm like, I don't know how I met this person, but they came into my life and I love them so much. I am so grateful. And like, now it's like about nurturing these magical connections and like just really like continuing to let the people know that I see you, I enjoy you, like let's keep dancing kind of stuff. So that's a little bit of my experience in the reveal. Okay, so if we're talking about revealing is how you can help intentionally engage all humans to be more human, being vulnerable. What to you, Ceylan, are the best examples of other people being human? Who are these people, and what do their practices look like to you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would start with you. I love the way that you are revealing yourself and putting yourself out there with your writing and with this podcast and just generally on social media. Every time I see a post by you, I do feel your heart and soul shine through it. So if you want to share your practices with the audience.
Okay, my practices. Gosh, that might be we would have to do a whole separate podcast. My practices. I think the best one that people listening right now would be the writing piece. I think that piece has helped me learn who I am, what my true voice is, and helped me shed a lot of layers of conditioning. And then sharing that writing just it helps me into that soul intimacy with other people. Like if I'm going to show my heart, people generally listen with their heart, and that's the space that I want to be in. So that's one piece. Maybe we'll jump into another podcast some other time of like all the rest of my practices, because we don't got time for it now. But thank you so much. I appreciate that dearly and deeply.
Yeah. And then I'm in a lucky position to know quite a few of those people. I'm kind of surrounded by them, so it would be hard for me to pick and choose a name necessarily, but I would say I mean, all the people that I've met in transformational containers, in therapeutic or otherwise, are definitely doing their best. And everyone is obviously at a different stage of that journey, but I see everyone doing their best to really, become masters of being human.
And like, really, how could we ever put a definition on what being a master of being human is? I mean, we can come back to like painting and art. It's a continual work of art, and like how we can do it and how we can relate, and humility and vulnerability. But it's still fun to play in this space, and like, because you can get better, like you can have deeper connections, you can be someone like you who has tons of, deep connections around you, and that's, if that fills your heart, I would assume that fills a lot of people's hearts if they get there. It's a place a lot of us want to be and live in, and play in and whatnot. So, okay. Gosh, I almost want to like dive into like your practices and like hand the question back to you, because I think it's really special to meet with and engage with somebody who's, one, been on this journey themselves, two, is facilitating other people on this journey. And so like for me, like where these questions came from, like I'm genuinely curious, like what have you done? What are you doing? What have you kind of let go of? And like what's still in your life now that's like a central piece that you feel like helps your practice of being a whole human today? Like, is there anything of your practices that you feel like you could share to our listeners?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot. So I'm not but super structured. I have my, like super set in stone type routines kind of person. What I do generally is depending on what I'm working with at any given time in my life, whether developmentally or I could be working with a specific trauma. And then the practices that I use tend to change and adapt to that. Currently, if I were to maybe talk a little bit about my kind of all-time favorites, I would start with prayer, because that has been with me since I was a little child, and it has always been with me to this day. And I find it is super powerful for me because it connects me to the deepest longings that I have. It humbles me. It puts me in a place of humility and of acceptance that I don't necessarily control everything, and also puts me in the right relationship with the invisible. So yeah, I just find it puts me in the right place, and it also reminds me what's important to me and just elevates my state almost immediately. Just the act of saying, I need help, or just the kind of the courage that it takes as humans for us to kneel down and be on our knees and accepting of our not knowingness. That always helps. Yeah. Which hasn't been super easy. It's for like an A-type personality, but
I love I love what you said in there though, that it's not super structured. And I feel like that helps give permission to people who, practice sounds like something you do every day at the same time, every day. And it can be that. It can be that when we're a lot in our masculine. It can also be what you are needing in the moment and can change from day to day. And that could be a bit more of the feminine, and learning how to engage those two. And I would say almost from my own personal experience of, I learned in the you do it at 7 o'clock for an hour, don't miss a minute kind of thing. And that has helped keep me in line for many different things, the discipline of that. And with that, kind of tuning into, what do I really need now? Do I really need to do this for an hour? Do I need to just go sit outside in nature for 20 minutes today? And doing that, kind of moving into the feminine without any guilt or shame that I'm not doing the hour, has been an interesting journey. So I feel like your example there helps give people permission to like blur that line, and again, come into that inner union with themselves. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Another practice that's super useful that I'm using now, that I'm working with more freeze, and that's so down-regulating your nervous system, basically. So I do lots of different things, from orienting to just noticing, to working with kidney and renals, to working with joints. There's lots of different practices, but they're all essentially our invitations to come to the present moment into our bodies with presence and love. And I find that super simple but super powerful practice really, really important, because essentially trauma is the thing that cuts our ability to access here and now. So we kind of repeatedly live and relive the traumatic event, and the reality of that traumatic event bleeds into our existing reality. So for me, doing some nervous system work, just as simple as, feeling your butt on the chair and your feet on the ground, and just like looking around and orienting and bringing yourself and listening to your breath and bringing yourself to the present moment, in and of itself can be super, super powerful practice, any time of the day, just to center and ground. I think that's crucial as well.
Yeah, so down regulating the nervous system and becoming well versed in how your nervous system down regulates. One of my favorite practices for that is the simple doubling your inhale and exhale. So for a 4 count breath in and an 8 count breath out is like one of those immediate down regulators. Do you have any practices that, beyond sitting in your chair, feeling your feet on the ground, that helps down regulate your nervous system?
Yeah, I mean, going in nature always does. Going in the water always does. I mean, even if I don't have the ocean or like a natural body of water, even just taking a warm shower generally resets my nervous system. Touch does. So if I have my partner or someone that I feel comfortable to be, in a hug, or then that definitely the co-regulation also supports me to down-regulate. But if not, just, touching myself and just kind of like soothing myself, rocking in the chair, actually, like forwards and backwards, help a little bit as well. The thing is, like, our bodies actually know how to come to that settled state. It's just our conditioning and dominion over the more instinctual and animal side of our being, ends up stops our instinctual responses, right? So like if left to our own devices, we would actually know exactly what to do to calm ourselves. But yeah, at first it does require intentional reconnecting with that possibly atrophied muscle to rebuild it. But yeah, time in nature, borrowing another person's nervous system, essentially, who's downregulated, via a hug or just, holding hands or whatever, watching the sunrise or the sunset. Just generally, nature puts me in my place, and everything kind of becomes, I'm not going to say less important, but it does bring perspective. So that definitely helps me downregulate my nervous system. Castor oil treatments I do sometimes to downregulate with hot water bottles. Yeah, I mean, smells that I like, creating an environment that is supportive, helps downregulate. Breath work helps downregulate as well, but I find actually, instead of trying to intentionally, downregulate or upregulate using the breath, what I find helps me most is actually just listening to my breath as it is. And then I find, as I am bringing presence to how I'm breathing, it naturally kind of deepens without me. Sometimes if I'm in a very heightened state of anxiety and, shallow breathing, I don't necessarily find, for instance, in that case, deep breathing doesn't necessarily always help me. I need to ease into it. Yeah, so pets, animals.
I like that piece of witnessing where you are with the breath before taking a step of action. It's almost like coming into presence with, not running away from the sense that you're having, just really noticing it, acknowledging it, and then generally, like you said, in the acknowledgement, the release sometimes just happens. But in that is practice of witnessing and presence and whatnot. Cool. Okay. You said something about castor oil. Is that you put that? Do you put that in water bottles, like warm water bottles, to help soothe? Or
I use it generally before my menstrual cycle, actually. And so I put it on my womb and on the skin, and then I just wrap it with like a cotton clothes, and then yeah, and then put like a hot water bottle on it, and I just journey. It feels like a little microdose, really, with the castor oil, because like all the plants obviously have their own medicine. So I sometimes turn it into a little journey as well. Just relaxes the muscles incredibly. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. It also has me kind of curious since we're talking about down regulating the nervous system and being able to notice where your nervous system is, if you are engaged, if you are hyper engaged, and whatnot. And just really coming into, I think the question that I'm most curious about is like, is there an expectation to be able to stay down regulated most of the time?
No. I mean, I think expectation. I think the ideal situation is to have a flexible like nervous system where you are able to kind of journey through waves of down and up regulation, preferably with not like too much of spike and then, either in either direction. And to have a resilient enough nervous system that you can actually journey through the states, and you can bring yourself back to down regulation, and you can also have the capacity and the level of containment to also hold up regulation. Because I think I don't believe that it's always right to down regulate yourself. I think it's sometimes the right thing to do, yes, but sometimes it might be more appropriate to actually allow whatever's coming up, whatever activation, emotional reactivity, etc., to actually be embodied and expressed and move through as well. So it's kind of a balance to learn.
Okay. So kind of like surfing the nervous system, having the practices and the tools available to you to upregulate, downregulate, and practicing your ability to intentionally engage. You could get up if you need to for a situation, you could get down, or you can witness, presence, hold if one of those are kind of happening outside of, I don't want to say your control, but perhaps a new layer or something like that.
Yeah. I think the problem happens when most of us have unprocessed, trauma already, in the nervous system, and then there's like not much capacity or flexibility to journey. So there may be at the beginning a period of expanding our capacity and digesting that existing, undigested material first, and then I think I find that work to be a slow a slow journey, but definitely accumulates over time.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay. So for you, Ceylan, what are easy reminders to be more human when some around us are walking and talking a little less human, perhaps more program conditioned?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a tough one. Depends if I'm having a good day or a bad day. Also, I guess depends on the person who's not playing nice. But what really helps me is to stay connected to the truth that I'm responsible for myself. We're all here doing this human thing together. It's hard, and I can pierce by, if it's a good day, I can pierce anyone through their, behavior, into their innocence. And just remembering, it helps me to remember that everyone also has their little girl, little boy, with them, regardless of how old they are, and, you know, their wounded parts within them as well. Like, it helps me to connect to the why they may be behaving the way that they're behaving, not to necessarily tolerate it or, you know, stay in any kind of a toxic relationship type situation, but just to remember that, you know, if someone's hurting, it's obviously going to, you know, overflow, and to just remember that it's not about me, and, you know, it's about them, and they're probably in pain, and so I should probably have compassion for them rather than, you know, judge them or be angry at them. So that helps. And the other thing that helps is that, you know, I am essentially living in my own reality. So, you know, if they are entering my reality, I also, you know, try to pause and reflect on what that might be teaching me or showing me as well. So, yeah.
I think those are beautiful perspectives of how to bring compassion into a situation. Because yes, I agree, everyone has an innocent child within them that perhaps along their journey is hurt or angry or whatever it is, and not my job to figure it out. And but to be able to hold that space and be like, gosh, it's just a kid, you know, like, what did they do to you or what happened, kind of thing, and not necessarily, almost just to hold that question without needing the answer to it.
Yeah.
It's like a hug, an inner hug. And then on the other side, you know, how to interact when the person is an adult and saying things or whatever. I've found, you know, kind of just laying boundaries of, like, you know, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate. And to the piece that you said there of, like, the self-reflection of, like, what am I doing? You're like, this is happening in my reality. So somewhere there's either something I need to learn, something about myself that I might need to reveal. Somehow I've let this in. Okay. So how did that happen? And where do I need to maybe set a boundary for myself about the types of people that I'm willing to engage with, at least in this close of a proximity? I find those to be pretty helpful. And then, yeah, from there, you know, they get to do their reality and you're in yours, and, you know, wish them well on their way.
Yeah, I mean, boundaries are obviously another kind of simple yet definitely not easy type, you know, concept. And I think the challenging part usually happens when the person is not respecting existing boundaries, and then, yeah, what do you do then? You know? Yeah.
Interesting question. Yes, more revealing of yourself, and almost there's, in my experience, a gratitude that comes when somebody might not be respecting your boundaries, because you have an opportunity to come into a fuller expression and empowerment of what your boundaries are. And it's not just a here's my boundaries, I'm thinking about it. It becomes a full body, embodied, visceral, no more, the buck stops here. This is not happening in my world, in my reality, or the people that I interact with, and this is not the way that I want children to learn how to operate in the world. So yeah, those kind of boundaries that you get to set and feel in your body, that you know are going to help inspire kids, you know, and generations after you to interact with the world. I think that's really powerful. And if we can live in that way, like you kind of said earlier, that it's, you know, a transmission or whatever, that's the kind of stuff that transmits through being around other people who are living in these full, whole, integrated human ways.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we have our final question here. So how do we reconcile where we are with where we want to be, with grace and ease?
It's a beautiful question. It's a question that I grappled with a lot, actually, early on. And I even remember, you know, saying to my mentors at the time, of just like, where I am and where I want to be is just like such a huge gap. How am I supposed to show up every day knowing that there's like a huge gap? And I don't think there's an easy way really to deal with this gap. Like, I'm going to be honest, I don't think there's like a hack that would make it easier necessarily, other than knowing that's kind of where I got to now. I'm not necessarily there all the time, but now I'm just always reminding myself the preciousness of each moment and the preciousness of each experience and stage of development. And so, and also just knowing fractally that place that you want to be is actually in the place that you are. It's just the piece that you are working with in the place that you are just doesn't really look like the place that you want to be, but it's exactly the thing, that you need to work with. So you're still connected to that place. So maybe staying connected to that vision might bring some ease and grace, like knowing that, this is why I'm doing it. And even though, it's so far from there, if I'm connected to there, then the there is with me here, if that makes sense. So yeah.
It does make sense. It makes sense. So it's like, for me, kind of, you said grounding into your why, essentially. So like really holding on to that why do you want to be in this other place? And if we kind of look on a linear scale, you're like, that place is outside of you, in front of you. And the thing that helps me with that is almost doing self-reflection and thinking about where I was and where I am now is a place that I wanted to be in. And it almost connects, like it helps me remember that what I'm wanting out there at some point will move and be where I am now when I reflect to the places that I've been, because I'm there now. So bringing that place into, the centerness of your being, and almost looking at it like a full circle around you, and you're still there and the pieces just moved. That might have been a little too far, but
no, it's beautiful. And it's also why I think it's so important to be in the here and now, like otherwise you're always there, but you're never here where you are. So, it's kind of, you're here for the journey, you're not here for the destination. So you might as well just enjoy the journey rather than, distracting yourself constantly with the destination. And because when you do that, I think what happens is you collapse time and space, and here becomes there and everywhere. So it's like, there's nowhere to go. And then
100%. Yeah. And then here becomes fun and joyous, and almost in that fun and enjoyment, an update of what do I really want changes the destination. And you might even realize that what you thought you wanted is already here, and start having more fun and plan and do other things. And the new thing you want is like an even better path. I don't know. It's really cool. I totally get that. Time collapses, and being in the here and now really wraps this question up, like how to move with grace and ease, be here in the now. I love it. Oh, you, my friend, are a gem. Thank you so much for joining us on the How to Be Human podcast and sharing your wisdom with these How to Be Human questions. I think people are going to get so much from hearing your experience with clients, your own transformational journey, and just being willing to reveal that with all of us today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for, creating the psychic space where all that wisdom could be channeled.